Hey guys, Static here with another build video, this time for the upcoming Morrowind patch. Now this is a PvP build that is not going to make you friends. This build is dirty. It's the most cancerous thing I've ever come up with. This is Metastatic, which by the very definition refers to a cancer that is terminally spread throughout the entire body. This is a medium armor build, which everyone is hoping will be not only necessary, but actually better than heavy armor for the Morrowind release due to the cost reduction changes that will be implemented. That being said, your resists are inherently lower with this setup than with heavy, so you're going to have to play smart, which you should be doing regardless of armor type, honestly. I personally found that I'm enjoying medium armor more because it does force you to know your class more intimately, and I enjoy the skill curve associated with that playstyle. So, with full disclosure, this is a completely retarded proc build, and as I mentioned before, this is not an honorable build, and you will get called out for it. But generally, if you're a solo or small scale player like I am, you're trying to fight outnumbered 99% of the time. And cheese builds, they're an effective way to combat against being zerged down. Will you get zerged down? Sure. I mean, this is ESO, and in open world, that's always going to be a thing, unfortunately. In Battlegrounds, hopefully your odds will be improved. I mean, the worst possible case scenario, you will get double teamed and it's going to be a 4-on-8, which, as we all know, is better odds than Cyrodiil any day. Let's take a look at the stats. Now, our weapon damage doesn't really matter all that much, same with max stamina, just because this is a proc build and we're going to be relying on those procs to do the majority of our damage. So if we look at buffed up, we're looking at just shy of 3k weapon damage with continuous attacks. It will be over 3k, and on your back bar you're looking at 3250 or so with the continuous attacks. Our resists are pretty good. That goes up 3% more on a ransack. So we're looking at 35% reduction on physical, 32 on spell resist. So it's pretty good. Crit resist 2k. Like I mentioned in other build videos, I always try to go for 2k. That just means that with transmutation, you're going to be looking at 3300 resist, which is the cap. So let's look into our penetration is just base with a sharpened weapon. Don't need to really go much higher than that. Like I said, the procs are really where it's at. Our health is about 24k, 25k in a CP campaign. Magicka, we're looking at 13k, which is nice. And our max stamina, as I said, 30k isn't bad. It's just not what we need to focus on this build. I'm a stage 4 vampire just for the extra resist, which we actually, or recovery rather, we actually have good recovery with this setup, and that's due to the food we're running. I was running the Dubious Throne Camlorn food, which gives you the max stam, max HP, and stamina recovery. But I've found that with the proc setup, you don't need the max stam. So the Magicka recovery goes a long ways on a stam sort because of Dark Deal, Streak, and things of that nature. You're buffing up with Crit Surge. The Magicka really comes in handy. So I like to play with the dual recovery and max health setup of the Jules misroll here. The potions I'm running are immovability. You can go with the Major Expedition or with the Savagery ones, which gives you even more crit rate. I'm running Shadow Mundus Stone for a CP campaign with just about 40% crit. If you're going to go to a new no CP environment such as Battlegrounds or Azura Star, you're going to want to swap that out for Thief. You'll just be too low to support the crit damage from Shadow. The other potion I'm running is same thing, just a Detect Bot. It's going to give you Magicka back rather than Stamina, which doesn't really matter in the case of a Stam sort because I can convert that Magicka into Stamina, so either resource you get back is fine by me. So one for move speed or savagery, and one for detection. Let's take a look at our item sets here. This is where it gets dirty. We're running Tremor Scale. We are going to be using Ransack as our main DPS, as a Stam Sorc really doesn't have a spammable DPS skill. If you're good with Dizzying Swing, you can use a two-hander. I've never gotten good with it, so I like to go with Tremor Scale to use Ransack as my main DPS. We're going to be pairing that with Red Mountain and Viper. So we have 3 proc sets here, and when they all go off at the same time, your target is going to be hurting in a hurry. I am Tri-Stat and Glyphed on everything. Like I said, we don't really need the max stamina to make our damage because we're running the procs. So running medium armor, which we're running 5 medium and 2 heavy on the helm and shoulders. Running medium armor, you're going to have less max health. So running the Tri-Stat Glyphs really helps with the health, and having that max Magicka really helps out with buffing up with Crit Surge, streaking, anything that Dark Deals, anything that a Stamsorc needs. Magicka is always good. So between the recovery and the max Magicka, we're covered on that front. You're going to want max weapon damage on our jewelry, and you're going to want a disease and poison enchantment on our weapons. The reason I like to go with disease on the front bar is because I use Reverb Bash, and disease damage gives a 5% reduction to healing received, just like a major Befoul would. So I like to use that. We're using Impan on all of our gear, just so we don't need to put anything in CP to get to the 2k mark, where transmutation will put us up to the cap. As far as back bar goes, I'm playing around with a sharpened battle axe of Red Mountain, just to try and proc that on the way in, and I do like to bleed with it. I go between this and my sharpened maul of the Viper. Viper's going to proc more often, you can use that. But I do also like, I go back and forth between this, I do also like the fact that Viper and Tremor Scale both are a 4-second cooldown, so pretty much they're going to proc on cooldown with each other constantly. So both setups are good, you just play around with whichever way is easier to get and better for you. Let's take a look at our skills. As I mentioned before, we are going to be running Reverb Bash. It's our main stun. It applies Major Defile, which normally is 30% reduction on healing. With the CP points into the Befoul, it's up to 35%. Between that and the Disease Enchantment on our dagger, it's going to be 40% reduction to healing. So it's very strong. It's going to get even stronger this next patch when they improve the effectiveness of points put into Befoul. So it's going to be even stronger. Keep in mind, you do have to land the stun to apply the Defile. If they block and you hit them with this, it's not going to apply the Defile. So you always want to make sure that you actually land it to know that they got defiled. Streak, this is our main source of mobility. Ball of Lightning is the best choice for right now because Streak is bugged, you get rooted in ground. Hopefully by Morrowind they'll have this sorted out. Streak is the stronger choice between the two when it's not bugged. Ransack, this is our main source of DPS with the Tremor Scale. It's okay tooltip on the damage buffed up here. Let's take a look and see what it's at. So it's about 7,000 damage, but it does apply the Major Fracture, so your next hit after that is going to hit a little harder because of that. You can go with the Pierce Armor morph of this if you're running in a group and you want to also debuff their spell resist if you have magic people in your group. I like to, just because I like the small scale and solo play, I like to go with the Minor Resolve, which the 1320 comes out to about 3% reduced physical damage taken in your resist, so it's nice. I also like that the Fracture does transfer over to the back bar for executing and such, so I like to use it for that. Vigor, it's your main source of heal, got to have it on that front bar. It's going to increase in cost for Morrowind, but it's still going to be necessary for pretty much every stand build out there, so still going to be using it. Dark Deal, this is our main source of sustain. This is why we want the food we've chosen to get the extra Magicka recovery, why we want the increased Magicka pool with our Tri-Enchants. It's bread and butter sustain for a Stamsorc. As long as you're not getting bashed while you're using this, then you're in good shape. But if people know you're using it, you get bashed, you're probably going to go down. So keep that in mind. You want to create space with Streak, line of sight, use your Dark Deal, get your resources back. Dawnbreaker is smiting. It's still the best best option for a Stam Sorc. We don't have a class-specific ultimate to use, so we have to utilize this. Back bar, our execute. I like reverse slice just because of the AoE splash. I've used executioner. It does hit a little harder on single target, which is nice. But so many times you'll get someone down to 5% health and you're trying to land the execute and his buddy steps in his way, or he'll be around a guard gets hit by it instead, and that guy's going to get away. Reverse slice keeps this from happening. Plus also, if you do have a target under 50%, if you read this closely, if you have a target under 50%, it's going to deal 300% more damage. That also applies to the 88% damage taken for the splash damage. So if you're hitting a low target, even though the target next to it is at 100% health, it's still going to be doing the increased damage as if they were low, because the slash damage is 88% of the damage done to the primary target. If your primary target's low, everything's going to be taking a lot of damage from reverse slice. So always try to hit the low target, but if someone does step in the way, they're still going to get splash damage. You're still going to get the kill, hopefully. Critical Rush, this is your gap closer. We don't have one as a Stam Sorc, so I like to use Crit Rush. If you're going to be using Dizzying Swing in your builds, I like Stampede better, but as I mentioned before, I'm not the best at using Dizzy Swing, so Crit Rush for the increased damage is good for me. Hurricane, this is our main source of our major resistances. It also gives us minor expedition for the 10% move speed, so it's very good. Got to use it as a Stam Sorc. Rally, this is a source of major brutality, and it's a burst heal. You got to have a burst heal out there in Cyrodiil or in any IC, BGs, whatever. You got to have a burst heal. So that's why we have that there. Shuffle, you got to be able to remove snares. It's very important. So this gives us that, plus the major evasion, just because of our... it's nice to have some dodge chance. It's 15%, it got nerfed, but it's still effective. I like to use Energy Overload back here. I always like to use Overload on all my abilities. It's a perk of being a Stam Sorc or a Sorcerer in general, so why wouldn't you use it? Have a third bar. On our third bar, I like to use Spell Symmetry with our Dark Deal. So this gives you Magicka based back on health. So as long as you have a healer next to you, because if you read, it prevents you from healing yourself for 4 seconds. So you can use this without a healer, go line of sight behind something. Just know that for 4 seconds, whatever health you spend to get Magicka to then turn into stamina through Dark Deal, you're not going to be able to heal yourself. So make sure you either have the 4 seconds to be able to burst heal up with Rally and with your Vigor, or you're near a healer, you let them know, I'm dropping health. They just put heals onto you, and you're good to go. It's really nice also for buffing up back here, as long as you're not in a sticky situation where you need to worry about that. That 28% cost reduction on the next Magicka ability. So that applies to your Dark Deals, so you can use these back and forth to get cheap Dark Deals, and it also applies to buffing up with Crit Surge. Crit Surge, we do have brutality from our Rally up front, but this is a strong heal. I like to try and keep this up. Come back here to this back bar. 64 ultimate isn't that much to get back to this back bar every 30 seconds to be able to put this up. It's really important with the healing. The heals are really strong from this, so you want to be able to use that. I use Caltrops for right now back here. It's going to be changed to a 12-second duration, more of a like usable skill that you'll put into rotations for PvE and stuff. So I like that change for that. I do like that they'll be able to be stackable, but I'm not so sure that I'll be using it back here after the change. I might swap this out for like mines or something of that nature. Now, the one downside of this build is the fact that we don't have ranged attacks. Other than if you have an excess amount of ultimate, you can use your Overload as a ranged attack, but you can't always rely on that. So I have Silver Shards here to take care of people up on walls, guards up on top of resources and whatnot. In IC, I'll be swapping this out for, like I said, either mines or a trap beast. So after patch in Battlegrounds or in IC, I'll probably be running mines and trap here. So that's it for the skills. All right, the last thing I want to cover is our CP. Now, things are going to change into CP here, so keep that in mind. For example, Warlord, I don't have any points into that because we're not going to have this perk anymore. We're not going to have a cost reduction spot in our skill trees. So what's going to happen is I have points into Tumbling for the break free. We're going to be in medium. We don't really need the reduction to the roll dodge. So I'm going to be taking my points out here and putting into Warlord, which will then be the cost of break free. Until then, I keep a couple points into Bash here just because with our main rotation, what we do is a ransack, light attack or heavy attack, animation cancel into the ransack, and then a bash. It's the best DPS you can push with sword and board, so I like to get a reduced cost on my bashes there. I like to put a lot into recovery just because we actually do have decent recovery with this setup. And also into our Magicka recovery. Plus, like I said, I do heavy attacks a lot with our rotation on our main DPS, so I like to have points into tenacity just to gain a little bit more there. Befoul. This is important if you're going to be running the reverb bash. As I said before, this is going to increase even more with the changes that are coming with Morrowind, so you're going to definitely want to put points into Befoul. It's going to be strong. Our blue tree, we're just putting everything into our Mighty and our Precise Strikes because we have the crit to support it. So I like to hit hard with that. We don't have dots to run, so we don't need Thaumaturge. Mighty is going to get a nerf down to 15% with the CP changes. So we may invest more between Piercing, Precise Strikes, and Mighty. We'll just have to see how that shakes down. Also, with the diminishing returns in CP, we may be putting points over here into like melee weapon damage to just help out on our heavy attacks. You're going to get more bang for your buck for the first few points you put into skills, so it's going to be important. Now over here, I don't need any points into crit resist because I'm already at that 2k spot I want to be for transmutation to put me to the cap. But I do like to have 10 points into this tree just because I like this invigorating bash. It's a 1k heal. I'm going to be bashing often with my main DPS with the ransack, so I like to get that little extra heal. Plus the extra resist because we're in medium. It's not a bad spot to put the 10 points. I go more into Hardy than Elemental Defender just because I take more damage usually from the stand builds out there. We have some points into reducing our dots damage taken, and then usually always on my builds I like to have 10 points into quick recovery, just 10 points somewhere in this build. If it's a build that uses shields, I'll put them over here or something, but 10 points into quick recovery just to take less damage when you're trying to get a res off comes in handy out there in Cyrodiil. Well guys, I hope you enjoy this build. It's a lot of fun when everything procs together and your target goes to execute range immediately. That being said, you're going to receive a lot of hate mail if you run this, mostly because the counterplay is almost non-existent to it. The way I look at it is I'm just fighting cheese with cheese. If you're a small scale player, you get hit by every proc set in the game and you get hit by it often. So if you can deal with the saltiness of your opponent, run this setup. You're not going to be left down. Thanks for checking out the build, guys. I really do appreciate the positive feedback everybody's been giving me. It motivates me to create more content and stick with it. So thank you very much for the support. It really does mean a lot to me. Shoot me a like, please subscribe, comment below, check me out on Twitch, and I'll see you next time. So have a good one.